Okay, so we have here the sentencing of the four young men um, that were convicted of killing Jacksonville rapper Julio Foolio. Um, you have four young men. They were found guilty of the murder, which, I saw clips of the video, was an absolute heinous crime. These four men they were allowed to give their statement, their pre-sentencing statement, so that the judge could take that into consideration before she handed down each of their sentences. And we're going to take a look at that and see what these guys are going to be sentenced, and then we'll react to it.
All right, so Mr. Chance, I'm going to start first. I'm going to adjudicate you guilty. Count one.
So right there, she just said, Mr. Chance, um, I'm going to find you guilty. This is Isaiah Chance. He's 23 years old. I think he was 21 at the time of the actual crime. He's 21. He did get up there and he gave a speech and he told the community and he spoke to the young men of the community. Again, some people would say he's just trying to get his sentence lowered. Of course he is, but doesn't take away the truth of what he was saying in this point. He was saying it wasn't worth it. He was just saying all of the dissing and all of the this and the that going back and forth, and it's just not worth it. The killing is not worth it because now he is doing this time, and the judge has just handed him his sentence. Before they were, at a hearing to determine whether or not they would be facing life without parole or the death penalty. So it was a sentencing hearing as far as which type of sentence they were going to get. This is the amount of time. She's just giving Mr. Chance life without. But he was one of the guys, when he had a chance to speak, he did say something somewhat positive to the youth. How impactful? Who knows?
One, sentence you to mandatory life without the possibility of parole. Count two, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life to run concurrent with count one.
Man, right there, the look on that face when the judge says, I'm sentencing you to life without parole over something that you went out and you purposely did, even though you may have regretted it. Some of these people, I think some of these guys regretted it more than others, and you'll see why I say that.
Mr. Gathright. On count one, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life without the possibility of parole. You also have a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence. On count two, the conspiracy.
You see that little shake when she told him that? This was the young man who gave, probably in my opinion, the most powerful statement ahead of his sentencing. He quoted biblical scripture. He referenced his privileged upbringing. He also even dove into the fact that these boys are, he at least himself was under the age of 25 is when your brain fully develops. 25, 26. I mentioned that on a previous episode if you want, when I reacted to the other hearing. So if you want to go back and see that. But regardless, he gave the best. I think he gave the most genuine, truly remorseful. I don't know his heart, but he presented that way, right, when it was time to speak for the judge. Um, and he's the guy that, people were just so surprised, got caught up in this because of how privileged he was and how, he had a good, I mean, he came from a good upbringing and was living a upper middle class life at least. But he was doing things, traveling all over the world and, good looking kid, young guy, he's 20 years old right here. At the time of the crime, I believe he was 18 and his sentence is life without parole. And you saw that little shake, that's that, oh, you can't like, I'm sorry that the whole thing happened. I'm sorry that they felt like they had to eliminate Julio Foolio. I'm sorry Julio Foolio rapped about the things that he rapped about. And I'm sorry that it came to this. Me being sorry doesn't take away the consequences that these have to face, that people have to face. You can be sorry, like these guys are sorry. If I do something and I'm sorry, I still have to deal with those consequences. That's why, he talked about God in this, and that's good that he's talking about that. But ideally, you want to bring God into your life before something catastrophic happens, not because something catastrophic happens. Imagine how that could change things, good, glory be to God.
I will sentence you to 30 years in prison to run concurrent. Count 3, attempted murder in the second degree. I will sentence you.
I mean, once they tell you life without the possibility one time, all the other 30s and 20s, you're probably not even really taking that in because you're still on the life without parole. That's still ringing in your ears. You're just saying numbers at this point.
You to 30 years Florida State Prison with a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence, again to run concurrent with all other counts. On count 4, attempted murder in the second degree, adjudicates you guilty and sentence you to 30 years prison with a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence, again to run concurrent with all other counts. Count 5, adjudicates you.
Not to make light of the situation, and definitely no Diddy. I think there's going to be somebody that's looking to braid his hair in prison, man. It's like you have all that good hair and you're still growing, and you're going to do time in prison. Like, whose legs you got to sit between to get your hair braided in prison? You know what I'm saying? Think little things like that. Whose legs you got to sit between to get your hair braided in prison?
Guilty, sentence you to 30 years Florida State Prison with a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence, again to run concurrent with all other counts. And on count 6, adjudicates you guilty, sentence you to 5 years Florida State Prison, again to run concurrent. And again, for you and Mr. Chance, giving you credit for all time served. As to Davion Murphy,
Like getting credit for time served on life without, and plus another 100 years or 80 years worth of stuff. It's just like this is all just going through the motions, and it's. I don't ever want anyone that I know to have to go through this. So, and if I don't know you, I don't want you to have to go through it. Prevent these type of situations at all costs, guys. That should be the goal. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but let's prevent all this. Prevent where you can, right? You can't prevent everything. We are all going to be faced with things that we cannot prevent. And we just have to trust God and work through those ways. But all these type of situations that are preventable, let's prevent the preventable. Let's make preventing preventable cool again.
Mr. Davion Murphy, I will adjudicate you guilty of first-degree premeditation.
Davion Murphy, he said, you know, he said something to the effect of all, glory be to God. And just, he made a few comments, but he had a smirk on his face, and I don't know, he looks like he's a little bit more built for the prison life than the previous guy. So, again, he might be the guy braiding hair. I don't know. He doesn't look like he braids hair right now, but he might when he get in there. I don't know. I'm not, but my point is, um, yeah, I don't know how remorseful this guy is, but he seemed to have, you know, I believe this is hitting him, and I believe he was remorseful. Um, Less so because he was avenging one of his cousins that was killed, and so there's a whole thing behind that, and you can go look the story up and find that out as well. But I don't know, still crazy.
Murder, sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and you will have a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence as part of the life sentence. Count 2 on the conspiracy, adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life to run concurrent. On the attempted murders, counts 3, 4, and 5.
Well, I think that was already 2 life sentences and some change. 2 life sentences and some change. You're like, again, at this point, it's just like you're not even hearing the rest of what she's saying.
I will adjudicate you guilty of each of those, sentence you to life in prison with a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence on each, again to run concurrent with all of the other counts, and again giving you credit for all time served. And finally, Mr. Rashad Murphy, I will adjudicate you guilty of murder in the first degree, sentence you to life in prison.
This guy opted not to speak. He said, I love everybody, and had nothing to say. In his mind, he's probably thinking it's not going to make a difference. I don't feel like I'm not in the mood today. I'm already accepting the fact that this is going to suck. And it's not going to suck any less if I make a statement. And, I'm not mad at that if that's the way he was thinking.
Without the possibility of parole, and you will also receive a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence. On count 2, conspiracy, adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life in prison to run concurrent with count 1. On counts 3, 4, and 5, I will adjudicate you guilty on each of those, sentence you to life in prison. Each of those carries a 20-year minimum mandatory, again to run concurrent with all other counts, and giving you credit for all time served. All right, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
I do wish you gentlemen the best. I really do, to make the most of your lives going forward. And you do have 30 days to appeal the judgment and sentence of this court. All right. Thank you all. We're concluded.
Wow, we're concluded. You all get life without the possibility of parole, plus a bunch of additional time that we're going to give you to run concurrent. You're all, 20, 23, 20 something years old. You crashed out, you killed another, you know, a rapper. And I know Julio Foolio was dissing and all the whole scene, as far as what they're doing. I'm not saying he was, innocent as far as, bringing this type of energy towards himself and this type of, based on how, he appeared to be living and the things that he said he was doing. With that being said, these guys decided to take him out, and in the same, they took themselves out because now they are out of society. They're wearing these orange jumpsuits and they are going to be spending their days doing hard labor in the state of Florida and not getting paid or getting paid very little um, for the rest of their days, unless, God has some sort of, miraculous plan and they get out on appeal or something of that nature, which could happen. I'm not here to say that it can't, but barring something of that nature, these guys are cooked. And, but you know what? They're less cooked than the person that they took out because that person is no longer here to, um, try to refine themselves, try to refine their heart and try to change their behavior and try to, you know, have hopes. Because these guys can at least hope that maybe one day they can get out of here. Even though the chance it may be slim, they still can hope, hey, I hope I can get out of here. You know, the rapper they took out, Julio Foolio, he doesn't have that opportunity to be on earth having even hope. So if nothing else, you can just hope that maybe one day the laws change and say, hey, these guys were not 25, so we're going to give them another chance because their brains weren't fully developed, which was Mr. Gathrights argument. And I've heard other people, try to say as well. And that's why we have the juvenile system and all the things. But all that being said, I don't think that doesn't seem to be on the table right now. And it'll be a long time before something like that would even probably present itself. But what I am saying is they still have the opportunity to hope for it. They could start hoping tomorrow. They could be hoping right now. I hope one day I can figure this out or write a book and something. They've taken that hope away from the person that they took out of the world. Like I said, let's try to make let's make this preventable, guys. Let's prevent the preventable. These things are preventable. Let's prevent them. But we don't need killers on the street. If you are out here willing to, even if you're young, to me, I'm one of these people that's like, even if you're young, if you're a threat to people, you may be young, but you can have some grown-up consequences. If things of that nature. So I got to take a call. So I'll talk to you guys in a bit.
Austin atmosphere, but kind of put it perfectly. He does have a point.